This is Analytical Perspective, a podcast on entertainment. Today's discussion will be on the TV show Run the World. Let's talk about it. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and this will be a review on Run the World. Of course, we're heading into the 4th of July, and this series is almost coming to an end. In fact, 4th of July is the 7th episode, with one more episode left for this first season. It's kind of short season, kind of short show. So if you've been living under a rock and you haven't seen Run the World, I would urge you to go see it, to watch one episode. It's an 8:30 Eastern time show on Stars. It is 30 minutes long, and you will enjoy your 30 minutes. I have not failed one episode to laugh, to feel heartfelt in every episode that I have so far seen, and this season is slowly coming to a close. So this weekend will be episode 7, and next week will be episode 8, and then that's it. But like I said, if you haven't seen it, let me explain some of the premise of the show. Some of the premise of the show, or the premise of the show, is basically that you have 4 women who live in Harlem who go through the trials and tribulations of being black women in their 30s. And those trials and tribulations are everything from romance to career changes. And in it, there are a lot of things discussed and shown that are not typically shown in shows of black entertainment, like getting therapy, like women who are in their 30s and don't have children, what the process is like wanting to actually build that family and want to have children afterwards, or rebuilding your career when you once thought you were successful in one status and then seeing that go away and then having to start over. Those are very compelling topics. But that is basically the premise. And each show that they have has a small tidbit that you're satisfied with, and then they have a longer storyline that lasts the season, which for me has been great because every episode is satisfying, and it's satisfying to most viewers. Even though that there is a little bit of criticism about it being short, I can understand. It is the first season. You're trying to get viewership, and it's with Stars. So the creator of the show, Run the World, is Leah Davenport. And she is in her mid-30s. And she basically gave up everything, went to LA to build her dream of making Run the World come to life. So that is a success story of Run the World in one side, but also with it, she did an excellent job casting this show because you have Amber Stevens West as Whitney, you have Andrea Bordeaux as Ella, you have Brisha Webb as Renee, and Corbin Reed as Sandy, and all these women are in their mid-30s. So they're not far off from the age that they're trying to portray, and probably a lot of them either have friends or have also been in the circumstances that they're portraying. So that was great casting alone. That little tidbit, and I thought like that was so relevant because I know a lot of people sit back and they might watch Sisters or have watched Girlfriends or watched Insecure or have watched Living Single, and they'll compare it to this show, and yes, they are similar in a way. But at the same time, you have to look at how creative she was to really take into emphasis that I need to get people as close as possible to the age that I'm trying to portray. I feel like that was something brilliant. I also thought it was brilliant that Yvette Lee Bowser of Living Single, she was also the creator of, well, she's the creator of Living Single, but she was also helped in Different World. She's also the showrunner. So you have two powerful women who are bringing something elite to Starz. And what really makes it even a little bit more better is that the current running Black Sisterhood show is about an hour long. And it goes on a little bit slower time pace. And this show is 30 minutes, and you don't have the slow time pace where you're waiting constantly to figure out where the storyline is going. The storyline is constantly moving, and you're constantly seeing growth. You're constantly seeing some regression, but you're seeing more growth than anything. And it's realistic. It's realistic to the way women pick each other up, how women sit up there and walk side by side with each other, and the typical relationships of, the pettiness. That, sometimes you have to be able to call your sister out. Sometimes you have to be the one who tells the bad news even when you know that it's going to hurt. So I personally think, like, as a creator and as a cast, these women are really doing some immaculate things. Very immaculate. I love it. So with that said, I know heading into the next subject is criticism of the show. Criticism that I've seen on the boards is basically the show is too short. And like I said, that's because you're in the first season and you're trying to get viewership. The more people who watch, maybe the season can get longer. Maybe the show can get longer. You're basically out there putting the pilot out. Because realize that going with Starz is different than going with ABC or going with a BET. If you've never tried to get a show out to a network, especially a premium network, it is very hard the higher the tire it is, because premium networks, most people have to pay to get them, and most premium networks also have an extended family. To get on the main brand of a premium network is extremely hard. And the fact that this show has already got on the main brand of the premium network Starz, it's not on one of the sister channels, it is on actual Starz, is a success story by itself. Because it's not easy. It means that you have to go to a lot of meetings to get green light. You have to get the people behind the curtain, the executives and stuff like that, to really garner support for your project. So I know that was a criticism. I also know that it was a criticism that people were comparing it to Living Single, or saying that it was a mix of Living Single and Sex and the City. I don't know about Sex and the City because I have never seen it. But as far as Living Single, there are going to be some comparisons. Now, with that said, the basic show, when you're running a show that is a sisterhood show, you work on a game plan of the type of characters. Now, with that said, every sisterhood show has 4 types of characters that they have. They have a hardworking, they have an aspiring, they have a self-conscious, and they have a sharp tongue. You have a woman for each of those. Look at all the shows that you have that are sisterhood shows, whether it be Living Single, whether it be Girlfriends, whether it be Insecure, whether it be Sisters, and even this show, they all have one of those types of women. It is the basic formula. But with that said, this show is a tad different. It's a tad different because, in actuality, it's the only show that I know that hasn't had someone play attorney. You get Living Single, you get Max. You get Girlfriends, you get Joan. You get Insecure, you get Molly. You get Sisters, you get Andy. Every single time they think that black excellence with women is becoming an attorney or becoming a doctor, you don't have that with these women. You have these women who, a few of them went to Spelman, one of them went to Harvard. You have one of them basically is an account manager. She has her MBA from Harvard. You have one who is a grad from psychology. You have another one who is a marketing agent. You have another one who's a journalist or writer. So they're all doing different jobs and showing black excellence in different ways. That's a difference. Yes, it may be a little bit, sex driven, sex sells, but when you're in your 30s and, you're settling down, that is a change. And I'm going to say, it's okay to have that. It's okay to have that as a part of the show because I'm not the target audience. The target audience is a black woman in her late 20s to maybe early 40s. That is the target audience. And they like to see people who resonate with them. I think it was a positive to have people that go from HBCUs. It's a positive to see a woman who went to Harvard. It's a positive to see it back in New York City. Now, with that said, there are other dramas. People write and produce shows on what they know. That's why you have Insecure, that was way in the West Coast in California. You have Sisters, that's in Georgia. And you have this show that's in Harlem. And it's okay. There is money to be made for everyone. And with that said, you have all the different people, all the different shows trying to show different aspects of sisterhood that is different depending on where you go. But for me, this show was extremely realistic. And I like it. I just really do. I think that some of the criticism that I've seen hasn't been much. It's just been really, the show is too short. And the few people that I've seen that have said, well, this is not realistic, go to the episode that I'm about to review. So, it is what it is. But I feel like between the casting, and I'm not even going to hit you with the music itself, a lot of it is original. I will say that, what was it? I think episode 2 with I Like Trouble. That song, is sticking to my head. I had to download it as soon as I heard it. The music will really touch you in a way. It all flows together. And I've never seen a show this well put together. Because I will even admit, the first time I seen Sisters, I looked at it and I was like, the lighting is bad, the music is bad, the storyline is just too slow. Why am I still in, I feel like I'm still in yesterday, episode 10, episode 15. But not with this show. I felt like this show really moves. And this show it's needed. It's needed. It just really is. So with that said, I'm going to continue on with my review. I'm going to make it nice and short as possible on how I feel about the show. So episode 6 is called My Therapist Says. And My Therapist Says has a lot of different people in it. we actually meet Rosie O'Donnell in the show, but she's playing the therapist. And she's actually the therapist to all four women. You know? And it's kind of funny. So we start out learning different points of them being together and why they each have a little rivalry with each other in a way. We learn in the episode about Ella that she has known Whitney and Renee since they were in high school. We see a scene of that. We also learned that she was on the top of her game. She had just gotten her book. She had 100,000 subscribers. And she was making little quotes here and there, tweets here and there. And people were eating it up. And then she basically got her rise off of a black feminist movement. That she was portraying the black feminist and people loved it. And then when she came out and put her book out, the view that people scoped of her was not of a black feminist, because her life had changed at that point. She had fallen in love, and the point of being in love had really changed the scope of how she looked at the world. So we learned that she, at the age of 29, was first given a chance by Barb, who was played by Erica Alexander, to become an editor at Barb's Hot Tea Digest. So she turned it down because she was like, I'm going to be something big. I got a book coming out. I'm just like this 8-year-old who got this successful book. And Barb kind of tells her, like, you know, you can't live on that high society. You can't live on that high bar and thinking that it was going to last forever. Sometimes things are just flukes. Sometimes you're just the trend for right now. And I don't think Ella really got it that she was just the trend for right now, because you're trying to compare yourself and your black feminist movement to a kid that was grown up during a war-torn era in Syria. So we later learned that Ella's book flops. You know, her publicist is like, your book is, the critics are really after you, and it breaks Ella down to the point where her boyfriend at the time, Anderson, ends up going to Africa. Telling her 7 days before, going to Africa, and she's crying and she's weeping and she's seeing like everything in her life has basically just gone to the trash can. You know, she doesn't have the book, she doesn't have the love of her life, and she just doesn't know where to go from there. And on top of that, she feels that at times her best friend, Sandy, out of the group, sometimes garners hurtful rhetoric towards her, overly tells her the truth, I would say, in a blunt way. And that's basically what we learn from Ella. Moving on to the next woman, we learn from Renee that Renee hasn't always been this hot in the pants woman. She at one time was the chick who felt kind of, what I would say, she was kind of jealous of Whitney. So her and Whitney have that best friend relationship. They're the closest two. So you get Whitney and Renee, and you get Ella and Sandy. So with Whitney and Renee has a little jealousy towards Whitney because she's light-skinned and because she feels like Whitney has herself put together. Then she's been with this guy for a long time and they both strive for success. And she hasn't been with the guy who strives for success. She's with the guy who has a pipe dream. So we see her, Whitney, and Ella at the school dance, and they're pretty much ragging on Whitney. And Whitney basically tells them, hey, I dressed down so I wouldn't be the one who took all the sunshine. And Renee remarks about how, like, I didn't ask you to do that. I didn't ask you to dress down. You know, you're acting like you're doing me the favor. So, right there, we learn about her jealousy. We learned that Renee also has a problem being alone. She made a decision not to have kids with Jason. She made a decision that they were just going to strive for money. She didn't want to have kids because the vaginoplasty guy had died and because she didn't want to be looking all worn out and everything like that. She basically wanted to dominate the relationship. Now she doesn't have Jason anymore, and she's realizing that she doesn't have kids, and she is basically starting over because Jason has taken the money from out of their joint bank account and reinvested it into his group. So she feels alone. And the therapist relates that, out of all the girlfriends, you only come once in the blue moon. Even though you started here with me first, you only come once in the blue moon. Why is that? And Renee remarked about how she doesn't come all the time like her friends do because she lives vicariously by them. They each have something in their life that she's looking for. So whatever answer that the therapist gives to friends, she just uses that and manipulates that to the answer that the therapist would probably give her. So to break it down, the therapist basically tells Renee that she needs to start saying I. And she needs to start expressing her feelings so people actually know how she feels instead of always wearing this tough exterior to hide her emotions. Because that's basically what Renee does. She hasn't told anyone that she's scared to be alone. And the reason that she likes to dominate situations is because she's scared that by having her emotions on her sleeve, that it makes her seem weak. And it may weaken her to others. Then moving on to Whitney, who we see, like I said, in the high school scene as someone who has had to try to play herself down to fit in with Ella and Renee. But she's also someone who's complaining about Renee because Renee always seems to take over everything Whitney does. Or she's done things that Whitney hasn't done. Renee is suffering from the ability to have coming of age moments. And because she hasn't had those coming of age moments and she's tried to live up to this perfect life, it has stressed her out to a point where she has a hard time trusting in herself. She has a hard time rationalizing what she wants in life. She cheated on Ola with Chris, or the community ping, and she's debating on whether she should tell him or not. She's stressed about the marriage. She's trying to take down notes while she's with the therapist. And the therapist pretty much tells her, like, hey, you can't be perfect all the time. She asks the therapist who just sleeps with somebody they just met, and the therapist basically tells her most of New York. You're trying to be so perfect that when you have one slip up, it basically, you feel like it defines all of you, when in reality, people mess up. There's no such thing as perfection. Humans are perfectly flawed. Then we see Sandy. And Sandy, we see her basically talking with Ella and Renee and Whitney about the relationship that she's having with Matthew. And we see the projection of that relationship from the beginning all the way to now. And here's my thing with Sandy. Sandy is upset with Ella because of something that Baptiste said an episode ago. And Baptiste basically said that some women F up. They meet a man who can help their career and move on. Now, I know I may not totally understand it, but I agree. And I've had a lot of debates with people about why Sandy is really upset about that and why she keeps relaying that Baptiste was being passive aggressive and she kept calling me sis and stuff like that. And I'm going to put it like this. You don't get upset about the women in a man's past unless you don't believe that you are the woman of his future. Sandy is upset because from the beginning, from the very first time that we see her, we realize that her friends are calling her teacher's pet. We see she talks about Baptiste calling her sis, and she brings up the subject again. She talks about Ella not defending her to Baptiste. And the therapist basically tells her that, who's giving it life? Or is Ella giving her life, or are you giving it life? Now, I'm going to dig a little deeper with Sandy. I feel as though that when Baptiste talked about women effing up for their career or their ambitions, I feel like there was some truth to it. And I feel like there was some truth to it because Sandy is getting a lot from Matthew that Matthew is not getting in return. You see, Sandy doesn't have kids. Sandy didn't want Matthew to relay that they were in a relationship because he was willing to go out and say, we're in a relationship, and sacrifice his tenure because he cares for her. She didn't want to do it out of the projection of what people might have thought about her because people will say that I slept my way to the top. That's how she felt. So she already felt that way before people found out that they were in the park kissing and it became a big hoopla at the university, knowing that she is his grad student. And it makes it more problematic because she's his grad student, which means that she will probably have to go and study under someone else because that's a conflict of interest. Now, she's upset because she felt like Ella didn't defend her, and she's giving it life that, this F-up situation, and they're not really in an F-up situation. They're actually in an intellectual equivalent situation when that's not true because Matthew actually has more to lose than Sandy. Sandy is getting to play mom, but realistically, at any given time when they break up, Sandy could go her own way. And then she never has to play mom again. Sandy still has her apartment. She can go back home at any time she wants. Sandy is the one who Matthew could lose his job over their relationship. Could have. Sandy is still building her career, so it doesn't affect her as much. Do I believe that she really effed up? I can't really say that. But what I can say is that maybe when Baptiste was having that conversation, the reason why Sandy was so upset about it is because their conversation has truth to it. It probably has a lot of truth to it. And I know there's a lot of women who will sit back and tell me, because I'm a guy I don't understand, and they'll sit back and tell me how I'm wrong. I understand. I understand that I may not get it 100%. But it's hard for me to define that a woman would sit back and that conversation was very pivotal to the storyline. If you're not feeling as though you are effing up, then why are you upset at the conversation? I know some people will sit back and say, well, because it was disrespectful. She didn't aim it at her. She just said that there's nothing wrong if you're the type of woman who wants to advance your career by sleeping with a man or being with a man who can advance your career. If you don't also know that Sandy mentions that Matthew is technically advancing her career. So what Baptiste said has truth to it. But that's what we learn when they're all at the therapist. We learn that there are tidbits going on. We learn a lot about their past, how Sandy got with Matthew, and why she feels upset about Baptiste. Why is it bothering her so? We see why Ella is having her issues because she feels like she's a failure. She feels like she has lost everything. And you also get to admit why her and Anderson are not on the best ground currently, because he left. He left without any goodbyes. Or he left short of goodbye when she was in the time of need. We see Whitney trying to debate whether to tell Ola. You see Renee admitting to herself finally that maybe everything wasn't Jason. Some of it was just her. So we end the episode basically with some of the women confiding that, the therapist sometimes doesn't say I have any issues, or some of us have issues and stuff like that. And we also end with Renee finally telling them how she somewhat feels. That she feels that she's alone, and she feels that, she's going to get sick and die by herself and stuff like that. We finally hear Renee being honest and being open and let her emotions flow, being vulnerable, which is a nice thing. So that was basically the episode. And out of this episode, I would definitely give this episode an 8.5. And the reason why I'm not giving it a 10, because nothing will ever be perfect, and I'm not giving it a 9, because I kind of really want to know a little bit more about, what was their life like before. Like, I seen what their life was like in high school. I still never got the basis of when Sandy comes into the sisterhood. I know that Renee and Ella and Whitney knew each other since at least high school, and to a degree since at least like 4th grade or elementary school for at least Renee and Whitney. But I would like to know when Sandy came into that loophole. And I would also say, it was actually one of the episodes where I couldn't concentrate on the music. And I actually had to concentrate on the dialogue, which wasn't bad. It was really good. But that was my score. I gave it about 8.5. especially having Rosie. I know that there was some criticism about it not being a black therapist. None of that matters. What mattered to me the most is I thought it was very pivotal for the creator, Leah Davenport, to actually put a therapist in there, because there's a lot of shows that are too scared to commit to that point and to commit that all four of them are seeing a therapist. And they have no shame in them seeing a therapist. And they are able to talk with each other, have dialogue with each other, that, hey, we're seeing a therapist and this is what I need to work on. And they're actually taking the work that the therapist is giving them and actually applying it to real life. Because I will admit there are times where some of us go to therapy and we shy up. We shy up to the point where we don't want to tell everything that's necessarily going on so we can get the help that we need. And these women were putting forth their emotions, they were putting forth their vulnerabilities, and they were showing that, hey, we know that we're not perfect, that we have work to do, and once you give us the tools to be able to work on ourselves, we're ready to apply them, so that way that we can be better, and that way we can be a little bit more healed instead of being fractured or shattered. So I do it like that. And like I said, I know there are some people who were critiquing this to a point of, well, she's not following HIPAA, and why couldn't there be a black therapist and all that kind of stuff. Let's not nitpick the little small things. Let's be honest with the way reality is today, because just this past weekend we've had Sha'Carri, I think Sha'Carri Richardson, who's running track, be suspended, and people have been giving her a hard time, and they've been giving her a hard time because her mom passed and she smoked weed. And I've been saying, why is that the conversation, that she smoked weed and she was going to miss the 100 meters in the Olympics, and everyone's complaining about not getting a gold medal, but the real conversation should be that, is she okay? No different than Osaka leaving out of a tennis tournament saying that her mental health. I, for one, I love all of you. If you are someone, especially a black woman or a black man, and you need mental health, it is okay to seek it. It is okay to seek therapy. It is okay to let your emotions release and talk to someone about it. It's okay to have vulnerability. It's okay to do all those things. And we need to make each other aware that it's okay, if we need help, to let ourselves be helped. Sometimes it's nice to have a listening ear. So with that said, I found like that to be pivotal. And like I said, I wish that we wouldn't focus so much on what the color of the person listening to our issues is, and more about the at least that we're trying to deal with what the issues are, and we're trying to seek help. Because it can be very discouraging for people to seek help when they need it and everything like that. But other than that, it was a great show. I can't wait to see episode 7. And I urge you to watch it if you can. People have been discussing whether it will be a season 2. I have a 90% probability that there will be a season 2 on Stars, with the same way that it will be forecast, with the 30 minutes and everything like that. But if I had to make changes, the only changes that I personally would make would probably be making it an hour. If I didn't make it an hour, the change that I really think that would be pivotal to this show is to change the time. Instead of making it an 8:30 show, because 8:30 conflicts with The Equalizer, and it's kind of early, I would probably make it a 9 o'clock show. Or change up the day. Either one I would be satisfied with. Because I feel like Sunday's an open door, but it's nice because you also got the Shy. But if I had to make one change, the one change that I would make would be the time that it comes on. And for me, it's 8:30 Eastern, and I probably would move it up to 9, making it something that people watch before they go to bed or before they, decide to go on the, have that final nightcap. 9 o'clock seems reasonable. Either 9 o'clock or 9:30. But this has been Analytical Perspective, and I'm Pharaoh Moses, if you don't already know. And this has been my review of Run the World. And like I said, I hope that you watch it. And if you have been here for the whole 41 minutes of this 104 review, I thank you. I thank you entirely. But I hope you enjoy your fourth. And this has been real.